It is a warm summer day in the year 2000. A 16-year-old girl is sitting at the front desk of the Mar-a-Lago spa, reading a book on massage techniques. This girl, she is poor in the way that only people that have grown up poor would truly understand. Where you count things before you touch them, and where you would know automatically, and honestly without bitterness, that most things that surround you, they don't belong to you. And then the door opens. A middle-aged woman walks in. Bob haircut, handbag that costs more than this girl has seen in her lifetime, and she has this thick British accent and this warm smile. She introduces herself as Ghislaine and asks in a very sweet tone, "Are you interested in massage? How wonderful. Do you massage on the side?" The girl says shyly that she isn't trained yet, but she's hoping to learn. But Ghislaine has a proposal. She is friends with a very wealthy man who is also a Mar-a-Lago member. And the girl is being offered the chance to become a massage therapist for him, to learn her trade while getting paid. For a 16-year-old girl with no money and zero connections, the answer is obvious. She says yes. A few days later, her father drives her to a bright pink mansion on Palm Beach. Ghislaine meets her at the steps, as polite as ever, and invites her in. What happens in that house on that day is going to affect this girl's life forever. 10 years later, in Australia, a journalist named Sharon Churcher sits across from the same girl. She is telling the story to this woman for the first time. And the girl reaches into her bag, and she pulls out a photograph. And before she's even handed it over, she quietly says, "I'm not sure I should be showing this to you." Sharon takes the picture, and on it, she sees Prince Andrew, the Prince of England, with his hand around the girl's waist, while Ghislaine Maxwell, she's just grinning in the background. The girl is 16 years old in this photo, and the story behind it is honestly worse than the photo itself. She told Sharon about the precise day that she entered the mansion. When she was there, as she told it, she described an old, hairy man lying naked, face down on a massage table. Simple and routine, right? The massage begins. And Ghislaine, she's gently guiding the girl's hands, showing her what good technique looks like. But when the girl reaches the man's buttocks, she pulls her hands away. Instead, she wants to move toward the lower back. But Ghislaine, she says, "It is important that you don't ignore any part of the body. If you skip around, the blood's not going to flow right." So the girl awkwardly complied. You know, she's hoping to learn, and she doesn't want to waste this opportunity. So she does. The massage lasts half an hour. And then out of nowhere, the man turns on his back, and he starts pleasuring himself. He says, "You don't mind, do you?" But the girl, she's utterly shocked. And at this point, she's like, okay, I want to leave. But Ghislaine forcefully is holding her there. And then the couple proceeds to her. And then after they're done, they give her $200 cash, and she walks out the door. One of the last things that they said to her before she left is, "This is probably what you'd make a week at the spa." The girl's name is Virginia Giuffre, and the man that her, his name was Jeffrey Epstein. When Sharon found this out, 10 years later, she would write an article that would become the catalyst for Epstein's downfall. But in the 3.5 million pages of Epstein's files that the government released in January of 2026, they're honestly worse than anybody thought, okay? They reveal Epstein and his network of famous people and powerful people, not only systematically underage girls, but it also reveals that the most powerful governments in the world, they knew about it. and they had the evidence to stop it, and they chose to protect the people doing it. I have been left speechless, honestly. Today, we will review the worst of the new Epstein files. We're going to go through them one by one while telling you the whole story. And honestly, things are going to get worse. They're going to get progressively worse as we go on. And by the end, I think you're going to find out that the worst thing in these files is not the files themselves at all, but it is the criminals that are still walking free today. To make this video, myself and a team of researchers, we have spent countless nights going through these disgusting files. And while we are just starting, we're going to try our best to be worthy of your time and give you all of the facts and everything you need. So let's get into it. So who is Epstein? Epstein was born on January 20th, 1953, to a humble family in Brooklyn, New York. And by 1974, he was a university dropout with absolutely nothing particular to his name. But in the span of the next 15 years, through connections and scams, Epstein found himself wealthy and powerful. And over the following decades, he became the go-to man for immensely powerful figures. He built a vast social network. And that network includes some people's names who would later appear in emails and flight logs. The first few files that I want to show you, they demonstrate the extent of his reach. And your jaw is going to drop here because even before we get into the dark material, here is the flight log to Epstein's private island, Little St. James. And immediately standing out are the names of Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, the current and former presidents of the United States. Also, we have Prince Andrew of England and celebrities like Kevin Spacey and Mick Jagger. And then we have an email from 2010 in which Epstein was granted security clearance for an event involving the world's most powerful politicians, in which it said, "Jeffrey, please come. You may have private time with each. Your security clearance is approved." Yeah, that is as weird as it sounds. In 2011, an email discusses a donation to Harvard with American investor Leon Black. From 2012, an email references Torbjörn Jagland, the head of the Nobel Prize Committee and secretary of the Council of Europe. A 2013 email asks, "What does J.E. want for dinner with Woody Allen on September 4th at 7:30? And Epstein, he also received an email from a Dubai billionaire describing a lunch at the Élysée Palace with Emmanuel Macron, the then French Minister of Economy, who would become the president of France. Everything shown so far, on its surface, completely innocent, right? But beneath the surface, the FBI was about to expose one of the largest trafficking networks in history. So if you've heard anything about the Epstein files, I think you know, maybe just on a surface level, perhaps deeper, how crazy and dark this gets. So at any point, if you feel like you can't handle it anymore, or if we're touching any topics that just get a little too much, please feel free to either skip ahead or move on, and I'll see you on the next one. But I'm just letting you know that viewer discretion is seriously advised. On January 30th, 2026, the Department of Justice released over 3 million pages, 180,000 images, and 2,000 videos. What they reveal is not just a man. They reveal a machine built over 30 years, oiled with money and silence. And all of the files show us piece by piece exactly how that machine ran. The first piece is access. Have you ever heard of Richard Branson? He built the Virgin Group, styled himself as the world's most accessible billionaire. He kiteboarded with models on his back. He also owned a private island and was knighted by Queen Elizabeth herself. He's the kind of man that made you feel, just by existing, that wealth could just be innocent, right? In 2013, Epstein had already pleaded guilty and registered as a sex offender. The whole world knows this. And Branson? He's going to send him an email on September 11th. He says, "Dear Jeffrey, it was really nice seeing you yesterday. The boys in water sports, they can't stop speaking about it. Anytime you're in the area, would love to see you, as long as you bring your harem." He used the word harem. To a registered sex offender. I'm sorry, what? And then, in the same email chain, is a suggestion that Bill Gates tell the public that Epstein had merely slipped up many years ago by sleeping with a 17-and-a-half-year-old woman, and that he'd more than learnt his lesson, and was, yes, a single man with a penchant for women. But there was nothing wrong with that. Now, keep in mind, this is a knight of the British Empire coaching a convicted PDF on how to spin sleeping with. A spokesperson for Branson said the word harem referred to 3 adult women, and that Branson had been misled about the story. There was no victim named ever, no investigation followed, and somewhere in that room, none of these emails mention that victims were actively being. So it's fine, right? Peter Attia is a famous doctor with a best-selling book called Outlive, and a powerful brand built around health optimization and the trust of millions of people. On June 24th, 2015, Epstein had the following conversation with him. Attia sent an email talking about how he had received a new shipment, and Epstein responded with "me too," and included an image that the FBI chose to redact entirely. Attia responded to this image, "Please tell me you found that picture online, bastard." Epstein replied, "Afraid not." What is weird about this conversation is that the redacted image implies something very disturbing was sent, right? The DOJ doesn't just censor random images. They censor the worst material. This is material that is deemed not appropriate for public release, like at all. So what was in that picture remains unknown. Then there was another email, and in this email contains something so disgusting that I'm going to just bleep it out for you. It says, "Is indeed low carb. Still waiting for the results on gluten content, though." This is a famous doctor, trusted by millions, writing about female. And he is writing about this to a registered sex offender, and I genuinely cannot believe that this is real. Not at all. But on February 3rd, 2026, Attia publicly apologized, stating that he was not involved in any criminal activity and he has never been on Epstein's plane or island and had never been present at any actual parties. He said that the emails were, honestly, embarrassing, tasteless, and indefensible. He said that. He also accepted the humiliation. But there is the fact also that no victim has ever named him, and there was no evidence of criminal wrongdoing. So what do you do with that, right? In the end, he just looked away. And a lot of people did too. But the difference with him is that most of the people that did turn away, they didn't have a redacted FBI image sitting in their email thread. The next files include a much more famous name. I mean, all of us know Elon Musk, right? He owns Tesla and SpaceX, Twitter, and he is currently the richest man in the world. I did not know that, but it does not surprise me. He also financed Trump's election campaign to the tune of $277 million. And then I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2025, the two men, they had a very public falling out. And during that fallout, Musk, he posted that the real reason that the Epstein files had not been fully dropped was that Trump was in them. He also stated that he himself was among the innocent people that were in the files. But ironically, the new DOJ release kind of it shows something different. It does. On November 25th, 2011, Musk, he asks Epstein, "What day or night will be the wildest party on your island?" But then 1 month later, the conversation continued. I've been working to the edge of sanity this year. And so, once my kids head home after Christmas, I really want to hit the party scene in St. Bart's. Or elsewhere, and just let loose. The invitation is much appreciated, but a peaceful island experience is the opposite of what I'm looking for. Then Epstein responded, "Understood. I will see you on St. Bart. The ratio of my island might make Tallulah uncomfortable." Now, what ratio means here is the ratio of young women compared to men on the island. And apparently it is enough to make Musk's wife, at the time, very uncomfortable. I mean, the implications are damning. If everyone thought that the island was innocent, why would the ratio concern anybody, right? On his own platform, Musk wrote on February 2nd, 2026, Epstein, he hounded me relentlessly to go to his PDF island, and I always declined. But we have just read the files, and we saw that Musk wanted to visit, and the only reason that it didn't happen was that Epstein canceled at the last minute. He says, "Bad news. Unfortunately, my schedule will keep me in New York. I was really looking forward to finally spending some time together with just fun on the agenda, so I am very disappointed." Epstein canceled. Musk wanted to go. So this was a lie. No investigation followed. The wealthiest and most politically connected man in the world appears to have lied to the public about what these files show, and the response from law enforcement was the same as it always was. Silence. But the emails, all of them, from Branson, Atiyah, Musk, they're only the surface layer. The next set of files shows something much more precise than that. This is where Epstein didn't just know powerful people. He owned them. From the research, we were able to reconstruct his method. In the 1980s, Epstein used his connections to Wesley Wexner to misappropriate $46 million, then used that wealth to start a financial trust company called J. Epstein & Co., and he only accepted clients with a net worth of $1 billion or more. It was a near complete scam. But he had constructed the myth of a genius financial advisor, and that myth was enough to earn the trust of the wealthy. When people asked about his money, right, Epstein, he never explained precisely where it came from. He just hinted that he was doing intelligence work for secret billionaire clients that he couldn't give the name of. This gave him an aura of mystery and a convenient reason to never have to explain himself further. And we'll see later in the files that this part about intelligence, it might have actually been true. What Epstein did with Musk and all of his other connections was to first give. He offered private jets, property invitations to exclusive parties, and introductions to other extraordinary people. He arranged for Woody Allen to tour the White House. He offered Branson connections to the Nobel Prize Committee head. He paid Atiyah over $100,000 to be his personal doctor and offered the dazzling social access that came with it. He also offered Musk access to his helicopter, his island, and parties with the most elite people in the world. He set the trap. And once they took the bait, these people became socially indebted to Epstein. They became loyal. They backed him, even after the sex offender charges, because their reputation, it was now entwined with his. And to cut him off was to cut off his entire network, and it would put your reputation at risk. He was a social chameleon who understood with a predator's precision that once someone powerful had taken enough of your generosity, the only thing more dangerous than staying was leaving. But so far, this is only the softer method. He also used a much darker one, which is what the next file is about to reveal. So we mentioned Bill Gates earlier. In the last 20 years, Gates has invested billions into the world's largest charitable foundation, and is responsible for genuine progress against malaria and preventable disease. Gates and Epstein met in 2011. People had told Gates that Epstein could help him find some wealthy donors for the Gates Foundation, so they immediately got into talking. And on December 11th, 2014, Gates sent Epstein the following. "I enjoyed the breakfast a lot. All of the attendees were interesting people. We managed to talk about philanthropy enough to get their reaction without putting them on the spot too much." On the surface, their relationship appeared entirely philanthropic. But on July 18th, 2013, Epstein wrote a draft letter that he never ended up sending, and it reveals everything about the true nature of their relationship. "Dear Bill, I cannot believe that you have chosen to both disregard and discard our friendship developed over the last 6 years. I'm aware that accidents happen, but it is how each of us has chosen to deal with this unfortunate event that has me dismayed beyond comprehension. You have decided to discharge me from my job. Had Larry, your PR person, tell me that I engaged in morally inappropriate behavior, and then asked me to be the major actor in a cover-up so that you can maintain the reputation that you have worked so hard to achieve." This email clearly refers to Epstein's charges as a sexual offender. Gates appears to have tried to sever the relationship, and Epstein's manipulation, it's working at full force here. But the next passage is when it starts to reveal something considerably darker. "I can assure you that if the shoe were on the other foot, I would have said, 'Boris, this is not your fault. I confess to Melinda, you didn't. It was a moment of weakness, and I promise that I will do anything within my power to make it right for you. I have more money than anyone needs, and I do my utmost to structure something so that you will not be penalized for my error. In that regard, I suggest I buy you the house that you had your heart set on." And then the letter goes one step further. "To add insult to injury, you then, subsequently with tears in your eyes, implore me to please delete the emails regarding your STD. Your request that I provide you antibiotics that you can surreptitiously give to Melinda, and the description of your peanuts. You also made it clear to me that I am not to refer to redacted name. That is a topic that must remain between the two of us." But it does not end there, because there was a second draft of this. Yes, it gets worse. From helping Bill to get in order to deal with the consequences of with Russian girls, to facilitating his illicit trysts with married women, to being asked to provide Adderall to bridge tournaments. This is insane. A man who has spent billions fighting preventable disease is apparently being threatened through the soft language of a wounded friend with the exposure of an affair, an STD, and secret antibiotics. And the description of his peanuts. Gates denies the contents of these emails. He calls them unsent drafts, and that's true. They were unsent, but they were written, saved, and filed. Epstein kept them on purpose, possibly with the intention of sending them. But despite the contents in these emails, again, there was no investigation, nothing from the DOJ, nothing at all. And it is worth pausing here, because we have now seen 3 variations of the same answer. Branson jokes about harems and walks free. Musk lies about wanting to visit a PDF island and walks free. Gates sits in the files, apparently blackmailed over an affair, and he still walks free. Virginia Giuffre, at 16, she had no press spokesperson or protection. She just had a $200 bill and a door closing behind her. What the files also show is a man who knew Epstein best and simply lied about it, openly on record to Congress. That man is Howard Lutnick, the current U.S. Commerce Secretary under the Trump administration, and he was Epstein's former next-door neighbor when they lived in New York. In an October 2025 interview, Lutnick categorically stated that he cut all ties with Epstein in 2005 after seeing a massage table in his home, and publicly told Congress, "I did not have any relationship with him. I barely had anything to do with that person," claiming roughly 10 emails over 14 years. But in 2012, Lutnick emailed Epstein, "Hey Jeff, we're landing in St. Thomas early Saturday afternoon, and we're planning to head over to St. Bart's Anguillara on Monday at some point. Where are you located? Does Sunday evening for dinner sound good?" That is one email. And there are over 250 documents in the files with his name, most of them directly contradicting what he said in the interview. He lied to Congress and the world about his involvement. And the consequence? Trump's spokesperson said, "The president fully supports the secretary." Lutnick still holds his job without any questioning or repercussions whatsoever. Unbelievable. So far, we know that Epstein was immensely powerful by scamming his way to wealth. He was building this social network through favor and access and maintaining control of dissenting names through blackmail. But none of this leads us to the human trafficking ring itself and what was actually happening. The next files, however, they reveal Epstein's most politically explosive connections and serve as a gateway to truly disturbing content that was released. Bill Clinton was the 42nd president of the United States from 1993 to 2001. In 1992, Epstein donated to Clinton's election campaign, and that is how they first met each other. Between 2002 and 2003, Clinton logged 26 flights on Epstein's private jet to places like Africa, Asia, and Russia. In an earlier batch of Epstein files, photographs were released. The first shows Clinton and Epstein together. It is undeniable that they were, at some point, genuinely pretty close. The second was taken on Epstein's private jet. The face of the woman besides Clinton is redacted. And the thing that is disturbing here, it is not the image itself. It is the fact that the FBI was specifically instructed to redact pictures of victims and meaning that this woman that was in the image is one of them. Let that sink in. The third shows Clinton with Mick Jagger and Epstein at a restaurant dinner, which on its own, it tells us little. But then there are two more. One shows Clinton in Epstein's pool, alongside Maxwell and a victim whose face is redacted. The other shows Clinton in a hot tub, shirtless, sitting beside a victim. None of these photographs is incriminating by itself, but this is the former president of the United States, photographed in intimate settings with documented victims of a trafficking network, shirtless, in a hot tub, next to one of them. Not a single one of these images has been followed by a subpoena. Virginia Joffrey said that Clinton visited Little St. James and dined with Epstein, Maxwell, and two younger-looking girls, but that he showed no signs of being interested in them. And no victim has ever publicly accused Clinton of anything. But 26 photographs with victims, and Epstein pleading the fifth and refusing to speak specifically about Clinton at the trial, it paints a picture that nobody in law enforcement has chosen to examine. And it is becoming a pattern. Clinton, overall, has never been investigated. I want to show Bill Clinton's files because they illustrate just how far Epstein's connections reached and how deep the mystery goes into the involvement of some of the most powerful people in the world. Were the people we've shown involved? If so, how involved? Did they know? Were they guilty? We have no answers, and the real question is why? The next files are probably 10 times worse than Clinton's, but to understand their importance, I need to give you a little backstory. We need to go back to the elite social circles of New York and Florida in the 1980s, where Jeffrey Epstein managed to insert himself. And there, he met a flashy, young real estate developer named Donald Trump. And over the next 15 years, they would develop a genuine friendship. I mean, both were wealthy. Both were from New York, and both had a well-documented love for parties and being surrounded by young women. In 2002, Trump told New York Magazine, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it, Jeffrey enjoys his social life." I'm sorry, many of them are on the younger side? He said that publicly. People read that. People heard that. A former executive of a Trump casino described them essentially as best friends. While they have many public photos together, the Epstein files, they don't actually contain photographs as damning as Clinton's. The 3 images that have been released show Trump with girls whose faces are redacted, but the evidence is scant and the context is absent. In 2004, the friendship had appeared to end over a real estate dispute when Trump outbid Epstein on an exclusive Palm Beach property called, oh boy, Maison de l'Amitié. I'm so sorry. He purchased it for more than $41 million, while Epstein was furious. Years later, Trump claims that he severed ties with Epstein in 2007 because Epstein allegedly tried to flirt with the teenage daughter of a Mar-a-Lago member. In general, it appears the main reason for the break was probably the real estate fraud, not the moral revulsion that Trump would later claim. In the new January 2026 release, things take a darker turn. An email from Epstein in 2011 contains Trump's name in a very specifically alarming way. It says, "I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Virginia spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned." And then in another email from 2019, Epstein writes, "Virginia Roberts worked at Mar-a-Lago. She was the one who accused Prince Andrew. Trump said that he asked me to resign, never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls, as he asked Ghislaine to stop." Both emails suggest Trump spent significant time with Virginia, and he knew something, which was the reason that he had remained publicly silent. However, Virginia herself said in a testimony that Trump didn't her, and that he honestly couldn't be friendlier. So we're getting contradictory evidence pulling in different directions here, and it becomes genuinely difficult to determine what happened. But the files don't stop at emails. They keep going. Trump is further connected through the FBI investigation itself. We have multiple files from alleged victims, all sent to the FBI. This first one involves a limousine driver who transported Trump in 1995. And I want you to prepare yourself because this next part is very disturbing. Redacted reported that some of the things President Trump had spoken about during a car ride on his cell phone were very concerning. Redacted reported he was a few seconds from pulling the limousine over on the median, and also within a few seconds of pulling him out of the car and hurting him due to some of the things that he was saying. Redacted noted Trump continuously stated the name Jeffrey while on the phone and made references to some girl. As Redacted talked about his time meeting Donald Trump, Redacted immediately stated, "He SA'd me." Redacted said, "What?" As Redacted replied, "Donald J. Trump. He SA'd me, along with Jeffrey Epstein." And the report, it continues. Redacted advised Redacted to call the police regarding the incident. As Redacted stated, "I can't. They will kill me." On Christmas Day, Redacted contacted Redacted and stated that she had, in fact, called the police. Redacted did not hear from Redacted until the 1st of the 10th, 2000. Redacted reached out, stating Redacted was dead and noted that she was found with her head blown off in Kiefer, Oklahoma. Officers on the scene stated that there was no way it was a suicide. The coroner stated that it was a suicide. Redacted later stated Redacted committed suicide because she had gotten from a Mexican cartel. Redacted feels that the murder is a cover for Ghislaine. Were you confused during that? I was too. And I want you to remember here that this concerns the incumbent president of the United States. The accusations don't stop there. In 2020, an alleged victim reported her concerns to the FBI. It says, "I am very concerned for my safety, which is why I have not come forward sooner. I have talked about these incidents for years, and this has been documented. With everything happening now, I feel it is important for investigators to know that Jeffrey Epstein and many other rich, powerful, famous people were involved in trafficking me as a for them when I was 13 years old. I was by over 176 different men from June 1984 to December 1984. They even murdered a that I gave birth to while on the boat. They dumped her body into Lake Michigan. I didn't know just how powerful these men would become until years later. They were actors, musicians, politicians, athletes, royalty, and very wealthy men. Will my identity be able to be kept confidential? These are people who could easily make me disappear if they know that I'm still alive and have started talking." Holy crap. What a thing to say. The fear that she must feel, right? At any point, any one of those people that she's come into contact with, they could just take matters into their own hands. They could just offer. That's horrific. There was also the FBI NTOC names document, which contains a list of more than a dozen allegations against Trump, compiled from phone tips, alleging that girls as young as 13 and that actual parties were held alongside Clinton. Virginia Giuffre herself said in a testimony that Trump did not and that he couldn't be friendlier. And this is the same Virginia who named princes and senators and prime ministers without hesitation, yet she did not name him. Hold both things at once. A former limousine driver describing a phone call in 1995 that left him seconds away from pulling over and hurting the man inside, and Virginia Giuffre, the most credible victim in this entire case, saying that he was only kind to her. The files give us no clean answer, and the temptation to force one is exactly the kind of thinking that Epstein counted on. People who believe what they want to believe make better victims of a cover-up than people who sit with what they don't know. It's clever, right? Terribly clever. What is not ambiguous is this. The girls existed. The occurred. And the official position of the United States government is operated by a man whose name appears in these files more than most of the others. And that nothing in those 3.5 million pages will warrant prosecution. How is that possible? This is the largest human trafficking ring ever discovered, and there are no answers for any of these people. But the connections to Trump are not the worst part. The worst part is that the government had every chance to stop this and chose not to. It was ignored entirely. The whole time, the FBI certainly had Ghislaine Maxwell in their sights, but nothing was ever done. Epstein was girls openly enough that his entire staff knew about it. An employee described fanning $100 bills near Epstein's bed, disposing of used condoms, and placing a gun between his mattresses. His butler, Alfredo Rodriguez, stole a secret copy of Epstein's Black Book, containing names and phone numbers of the girls who gave massages, and then tried to sell it and was arrested for his trouble. FBI Special Agent Christina Pryor reviewed the material, but instead of pursuing Epstein, they punished the whistleblower. In 2002, journalist Vicky Ward investigated Epstein and found evidence of the of two sisters, one of whom was underage. She was preparing to publish it, and then Epstein appeared personally at the front office of her editor-in-chief and asked her directly to not include the accusations. Shortly after, a bullet and a dead cat's head appeared on the doorstep of the editor. This terrified the journalist, and the most damning accusations? They were excluded from the article. Epstein walked away completely untouched, and over the years, every warning sign imaginable was there. And nobody chose to investigate because nobody wanted to go against the rich and powerful. It's dangerous, right? In 2005, however, after a direct report from the family of a 14-year-old girl who said that she was at his mansion, it became too much to ignore, and finally an investigation was launched. The police, they actually did excellent work for once. They gathered the testimony from multiple underage girls who all described being lured to massage sessions. Epstein was arrested for the first time in July of 2006. The subsequent FBI investigation identified over 30 underage victims, and by May 2007, the prosecutor had drafted a 60-count indictment that honestly should have put Epstein away for the rest of his life. We have this indictment from the newly released files, and here is what it says. As set forth herein, over the course of many years, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, exploited dozens of girls at his homes in Manhattan, New York, and Palm Beach, Florida, among other locations. In particular, from at least in or about 2002 up to and including at least in or about 2005. Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, enticed and recruited and caused to be enticed and recruited girls to visit his mansion in Manhattan, New York, and Palm Beach, Florida, to engage in sexual acts with him. After which, he would give the victims hundreds of dollars in cash. The victims described herein were as young as 14 years old at the time that they were abused by Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, and were, for various reasons, often particularly vulnerable to exploitation. Epstein intentionally sought out and knew that many of his victims were in fact under the age of 18, including because in some instances, victims expressly told him their age. In creating and maintaining this network of victims in multiple states to and exploit, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, worked and conspired with others, including employees and associates. For reasons that were never fully explained, federal attorney Alexander Acosta agreed to a plea deal. Epstein would plead guilty to a single count of soliciting prostitution from someone under the age of 18 and serve 18 months in a work release program. That allowed him to leave for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. All federal charges were also dropped, and immunity was granted not just to Epstein, but to all of his co-conspirators, who, by the way, were never named. Epstein was never truly held accountable, even though everyone knew. And in the next 9 years, he just continued to walk free, connecting with people like Bill Gates and Elon Musk as though nothing had happened, settling civil lawsuits by paying off victims, and continuing by every indication available to do exactly what he had always done. In November 2018, the Miami Herald published a 3-part investigation by journalist Julie Brown called Preservation of Justice. And the impact was explosive. It revealed that Epstein had run a global sexual trafficking ring for years. and that the police knew about it, and that they had just let him go. The public outrage? It was large enough that the FBI's Manhattan field office felt forced to open a new investigation. It is a hot Saturday afternoon in July 6, 2019. Epstein is flying a Gulfstream G550-something, a $60 million private jet, and his plane lands into Teterboro Airport, a small facility for private flights. What Epstein doesn't know is that the tarmac is lined with unmarked cars, and the moment that door opens, the agents are going to surround the plane, and he is going to be immediately arrested. The 66-year-old predator did not resist. He knew that this was over. He was placed in a special housing unit at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan, locked in his cell for 23 hours a day. At 1:27 a.m. on July 23, 2019, his cellmate felt something hit his legs. And he turned the lights on, and he found Epstein slumped on the floor with fabric around his neck. His eyes open completely, but unresponsive. The guards were called, and immediately first aid was provided, and he was okay. But now, Epstein was placed on suicide watch. That means constant monitoring in like a special observation cell with the lights always on and just visual checks throughout the night. And surprisingly, after only 31 hours, he was taken off suicide watch. Instead, he was placed in a cell with a different cellmate. He reportedly complained that he was anxious and that he hadn't slept in 20 days due to the banging and screaming of the inmates throughout the night. On August 9th, Epstein's new cellmate was transferred out under mysterious conditions, but no new cellmate was assigned. And that night, 2 correctional officers named Tova Knoll and Michael Thomas were assigned to watch him. They were supposed to check up on him every 30 minutes. But CCTV footage from that night shows that they failed to do so. And both stated that they fell asleep for 3 hours. System deficiencies that night resulted in nearly all of the cameras in or around the facility stopping recording simultaneously. All of the cameras, simultaneously. The chances of that happening are very low. On August 10th, 2019, around 6:30 a.m., one of the guards checked on Epstein. He was found hanging from the side of his cell's bed, dead, with a noose made from his sheets. Or so the official story goes. Now, we all know the theory that Epstein didn't kill himself, but was ordered to be killed by powerful people, so he could not speak at trial. So I will just present what the files show, and I will allow you to make up your own mind about what you think happened. But I'm pretty sure we're all on the same side. So this is the first suspicious detail in the surveillance footage. This is what the FBI analysis states. At 10:39 p.m., a flash of orange looks to be going up the L-tiered stairs. Could possibly be an inmate escorted up to that tier. Inmates are currently on lockdown. It is possible someone is carrying inmate linen or bedding up the stairs. So just a few hours before his death, someone can be seen going up the stairs, possibly carrying linen. But now read this exchange from the interview with Tova Knoll. This is one of the guards that was on duty that night. Why did Epstein have extra clothing and extra linens in his cell? I don't know. But you said that that was something you did, though, as part of your duties to provide people linens and clothes. I never gave out linen, ever, because that's done on the shift prior. She claims that she never gave out the extra linen, yet the extra linen is reportedly what Epstein hanged himself with. The other guard states that an inmate entering the tier alone would violate policy and that they hadn't let anybody in. What's most damning is that authorities initially claimed no one entered Epstein's tier that night. Yet their own log and surveillance footage directly contradict that claim. In another interview revealed in the files, the Inspector General raised a deeply troubling question about the evidence, the physical evidence itself. I'm asking because in the photo you showed me, a piece of material is hanging, and you told me that the correction officer pulled and ripped it. This thing that they gave me isn't ripped at all. Like it would be ripped off of something. It's ripped to create a strip, but it's not ripped off. It's making me wonder if this is even the ligature that they gave me. The ligature recovered from the crime scene may not have been the one that killed him. Let me say that again. It may not have been the one that killed him. Then there is the file that, above all, demands an explanation, okay? We have a draft statement written by attorney Jeffrey Berman about Epstein's death. And it is dated August 9th, not August 10th, which is when Epstein actually died. The DOJ says that it was an unfortunate typo. A draft statement about a man's death, potentially written the day before he died. And the official explanation is, whoopsie, it's a typo. The independent autopsy conducted by Dr. Michael Baden, who was hired by Epstein's brother, found 3 fractures in Epstein's neck. Baden stated that in his 50 years of practice, reviewing over 1,000 jail hangings, he had never once seen an injury pattern like that from a hanging. The ligature mark was at the center of the neck, not high under the jaw where it is usually found in a hanging death. He said that the injuries were more consistent with strangulation than hanging. Overall, we have the previous suicide attempt, the disappearing CCTV footage, the guards who conveniently fell asleep, the cameras across the facility all going dark simultaneously, the mysterious figure seen carrying linen into some very mysterious hours before his death, the contradictory interviews, the ligature that may or may not have been the murder weapon, the autopsy findings, and a death announcement drafted the day before he died. Either this is an extraordinary accumulation of coincidences, or it is something else entirely. What is certain is this: the only man who knew every name, every property, the full scope of the network, and every person who had come through those doors was dead before his trial, in a federal facility, under federal watch. And he never spoke a word of it in court. In 2008, when Epstein received that plea deal and he was essentially set free, the federal attorney Alexander Acosta later claimed that he had been told that Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. And to understand why that claim might be true, I think you need to understand where Ghislaine Maxwell came from. Her father was Robert Maxwell, a British media mogul who owned the Daily Mirror, one of England's most powerful newspapers. And he was also, by extensive evidence and later public confirmation, a Mossad intelligence asset. When he died in 1991, Israel gave him a state funeral and buried him on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, one of the most sacred sites in the world. The Israel president said that his contributions to Israel would never be forgotten. He was a newspaper owner. Countries don't bury newspaper owners on the Mount of Olives for being good at newspapers. When Robert died and the family empire just collapsed, Ghislaine was left with connections and no money. Epstein had money. Together, they would build what the files reveal: a network designed according to a former senior officer in Israeli military intelligence named Ari Ben Menashe. They wanted to place underage girls in front of powerful political figures and photograph what followed, and use those photographs as leverage, not as a side effect of the point of it. That reframes everything we've discussed. Every email, every flight log, every photograph of powerful men in Epstein's properties. If Ben Menashe is right, these men weren't just being protected. They were being managed. Through Ghislaine, Epstein was introduced to Prince Andrew, Duke of York, and the third child of Queen Elizabeth II. Sometime in the late 1990s, over the following years, Andrew became a genuine friend. He traveled all over Epstein's properties in Manhattan, Palm Beach, New Mexico, and Little St. James. And he continued to associate with Epstein even after the 2008 conviction, when the entire world knew what Epstein was. Among the 2026 files is an email sent in 2001 from a sender identified only as the Invisible Man. And that reads, "I'm up here at Balmoral summer camp for the royal family. Activities take place all day and I am totally exhausted at the end of each day. The girls are completely shattered, and I will give them an early night today, as it is getting tiring splitting them up all the time. How's LA? Have you found some new inappropriate friends? Let me know when you're coming over, as I am free from the 25th of August until the 2nd of September, and I want to go somewhere hot and sunny with some fun people before having to put my nose firmly into the grindstone for the fall. Any ideas gratefully received. See ya, A." Investigators found that in 2001, Prince Andrew was at Balmoral. During exactly that period, he signed the email with A. Also, you thought I glossed over it. New inappropriate friends? He literally said that. No. Two more emails from 2010 stand out. In the first, Andrew writes, "Of course, I'm in Geneva until the morning of the 22nd, but would be delighted to see her. Will she be bringing a message from you? Please give her my contact details to get in touch." Epstein responds to this. "She is 26, Russian, clever, beautiful, trustworthy, and yes, she has your email." Then he replies, "I'll ring you when I get down if you can give me a number. Alternatively, we could have dinner at Buckingham Palace and lots of privacy." Epstein responds, "Already in London. What time would you like me in Vera? We will also need private time. What a convicted sexual offender and the Prince of England would need private time for, you can just determine that yourself." Also released among these files is a photograph of Andrew leaning over what appears to be an unconscious woman. There is no context. There's no caption. There is no explanation. There is just simply this image. There is just this image in the official government release. And it sits in the mind in a way that I don't think context could really improve it. Due to the Epstein connection, and even before this image, Andrew was stripped of his royal style, titles, and honors, including the title of prince in 2022. He now lives in a 50-bedroom mansion at the Sandringham estate in Norfolk. This is meant to be his punishment. I'm sorry, 50-bedroom mansion. That is a punishment? And also, what are you doing with 50 bedrooms? As of February 2026, he faces multiple civil lawsuits, remains under active investigation, and the British Prime Minister has called on him to testify before the US Congress, but he declined to say anything at all. What a wonderful man. What a wonderful person. What a wonderful guy. Yeah. But there is one more email between Andrew and Epstein that I have not shown yet. Attached is a confidential brief produced by the Provincial Reconstruction Team in Helmand Province for international investment opportunities. These are not exclusive to Helmand Province, but principally focused on that province. A senior member of the British royal family was forwarding classified military intelligence from an active combat zone to a convicted sexual offender. Why Epstein would want classified military intelligence from Helmand Province is what brings us back to the Mossad question. Epstein's former business associate Steven Hoffenberg claimed that Epstein had actually met Ghislaine as early as 1988, while her father was still alive and still operating as an intelligence asset. In 1991, a former senior officer in the Israeli military intelligence, a man named Ben Menashe, became the first person to publicly identify Robert Maxwell as a Mossad agent, and he was right. Almost 30 years later, in 2019, right after Epstein's death, Ben claimed in an interview that Epstein had also been recruited into the Mossad, and the trafficking network of underage girls was specifically and deliberately designed to be offered to powerful political figures, so that the photographs would be taken and the leverage established. According to Ben, this is precisely how Epstein served Israeli intelligence, and how he influenced political events at the highest level. To make this even more difficult to dismiss, Epstein knew Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak personally. They met at least 30 times between 2013 and 2017, and Daily Mail photographers show Barak entering Epstein's Manhattan home within hours of young girls entering the same building. Epstein was born to Jewish parents. He carried a fake Austrian passport, which was found in a safe during the 2019 raid, under the name Marius Robert Fortelny, with a listed residence in Dammam, Saudi Arabia. And an IDF shirt was found on Little St. James Island. Then there is this email from Epstein in 2018, sent before any of the public allegations connected him to the Israeli intelligence. It says, "You should make clear that I don't work for Mossad. Smiley face." He couldn't have been joking about the press coverage because there was no press coverage yet. There was also no public allegation to joke about. The context for this message it remains unknown. Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett called the Mossad allegations a smear campaign. Netanyahu wrote that Barak's personal ties don't suggest that Epstein worked for Israel. Whether Epstein was a Mossad asset will probably never be officially confirmed. What can be confirmed is simpler and worse. Every single room in every one of his properties was equipped with a permanent 24-hour surveillance system. Whatever that means. This is what it doesn't change. A girl named Virginia was being in those rooms. Other girls, whose names we don't know, were also being in those rooms. Girls who were 12 years old were being recruited and placed in those rooms. It doesn't matter who Epstein was reporting to because the existed. These girls, they were living it. And the people who had the power to stop it, they didn't. Now, I think it's time that we tell Virginia's story. It is the summer of 2000 in Mar-a-Lago. Virginia is back at the front desk at the massage parlor. On the surface, she is still the same girl, reading her book, working her shift, but beneath the surface, everything has changed. The phone rings. The thick British accent has returned. Ghislaine is asking her to come back to the Pink Mansion and massage Epstein again. For any normal girl, that would have been an easy answer. But Virginia, she was not in a normal position. She had been before, way before she met Epstein. She was in desperate need of money, and her relationship with her own mother was fractured. And she was too naive, through no fault of her own, to recognize that what was being done to her was criminal. Because her frame of reference for what was normal, it had been damaged long before Ghislaine Maxwell ever walked through that door. So Virginia, she agreed to go again. In her mind, she was justifying it that, it's just another regular job. But the same pattern repeated daily. Virginia was only 16. But Epstein and Maxwell appointed themselves her actual tutors, her regularly and criticizing how she performed. 2 weeks in, Epstein told Virginia to quit her job at Mar-a-Lago and become available to him 24 hours a day. And for that, he would pay her $2,500 a month. Also, cover an apartment so she could move away from her parents. When she hesitated, Epstein said, "We know where your brother goes to school, and I own the Palm Beach Police Department." Then he mentioned Ron Eppinger, the man who had kept Virginia captive as a child before any of this. He dropped the name so casually. It was like a reminder of what the alternative looked like. Virginia moved into the apartment because what other choice did she have? Her father drove her to Epstein's mansion in the mornings, and he didn't suspect a thing. Even her boyfriend lived with her in the apartment that was paid for by Epstein's money. Nobody looked. Nobody asked. It's crazy to think that. And over time, Virginia became Epstein's favorite. She would get calls in the middle of the night requesting that she come immediately. Along with the Epstein wanted her to dress him each morning, applying lotion to his feet, rolling on his socks, and holding his pants open for him to step into. He had her massage his feet and scalp in rituals that could last over an hour. He also confided in her, showing her his collection of photographs of underage girls. When he did, it was like he was presenting her a library. Also, he told her that he needed to reach pleasure at least 3 times a day as a biological imperative. He also gave her books to read and controlled what she ate to keep her thin. Epstein and Ghislaine built around her a toxic simulation of parental care. Something that, it looked like care from the outside and functioned more like from the inside. And then if it couldn't get worse for this girl, Epstein began trafficking her. She was first sent to what Virginia calls billionaire number 1. She massaged his pregnant wife first, and then was forced to have an actual encounter with the man, while his pregnant wife watched. Virginia was also trafficked to a world-renowned academic event where famous scientists and intellectuals ended up using her. She was sent to a gubernatorial candidate who won his election, to a former United States senator, to politicians, and to a modeling agent named Jean Brooke Brunel, who her multiple times. And, like Epstein, died in custody just before his own trial in France, apparently by suicide. Prosecutors described Epstein's recruiting model as a pyramid scheme, and it was brutally, mechanically efficient. Maxwell and her assistant, Sarah Callan, would station themselves outside New York high schools. At 3 p.m, exactly when classes ended, there, they would identify the prettiest girls. They would approach them, and they would offer $200 for a massage for a wealthy man, and double if they brought a friend. They specifically targeted girls between the ages of 12 and 17, girls from fractured homes or low-income backgrounds, girls that they thought naive enough or just desperate enough to follow them. The same thing that happened to Virginia would end up happening to those girls. They would be psychologically trapped, and as they would age out of Epstein's preference, they would move up the chain. And then they became recruiters. They became the ones waiting outside the schools at 3 p.m. Virginia was eventually brought into that role. She writes in her memoir, "The faces of girls I recruited will always haunt me. I know their pain, and I will never get over playing a role in causing it." It's really heartbreaking. Wow. In March of 2001, Maxwell woke Virginia at the Manhattan property, and he told her that she is going to go and meet a handsome prince. They spent the day shopping together. Virginia bought jeans with horse embroidery on them and a pink tank top. And she said it was a good day because the people who had destroyed her sense of reference were the same people that were taking her shopping. And that had become her normal. Later that afternoon, Prince Andrew arrived at Maxwell's Belgravia townhouse, and he met Virginia. He looked at her, and he guessed her age, 17? And then he explained that he knew the ages of young girls because his daughters were the same age. And then the photograph was taken. This was the photo that she held when she gave to Sharon and said, "I'm not sure I should be showing this to you." It's the same photo. By Virginia's account, hours after the shutter clicked, she was forced to bathe Andrew and then forced into an actual encounter with him. Epstein paid her $15,000 afterward. And then there was a second encounter. And then a third later that year, the last of which she describes as a actual party involving many people, notably involving Andrew Epstein and approximately 8 other underaged girls who did not speak English. In July 2001, Virginia woke up in a pool of blood at the Manhattan house with severe abdominal pain. She was taken to the hospital under the false claim that she was 18. Doctors found evidence consistent with a miscarriage. Epstein and his associates, they never wore condoms. Just think about how terrible that decision is for these poor young girls. Epstein, he would begin using restraints on her. A black leather metal-studded collar attached to chains that would bind her hands and feet. And she writes, "The back-breaking contortions that this contraption forced upon me caused so much pain that I prayed that I would black out." She was trafficked to a man she described as a well-known prime minister on Little St. James. This man choked her until she lost consciousness. He laughed when she begged him to stop, and he became more aroused by her fear. Virginia would emerge from that encounter bleeding from her mouth and her privates. She was completely unable to breathe or swallow without pain for days. And when she begged Epstein never to send her back there, he said, very calmly, "You'll get that sometimes." But that was her breaking point, right there. In the summer of 2002, Epstein and Maxwell sat down with Virginia and proposed that she bear Epstein's child. $200,000 per month, a mansion, round-the-clock nannies, and she would sign away all legal rights to the child. Virginia sat across from these two people who had owned her life for 2 years, and she really thought about what these people would do with a female child. She felt this unimaginable horror. She didn't say no directly, because that would have been so dangerous. Instead, she reminded them of a promise that they had made to send her to Thailand for professional massage training. She said she would consider their proposal if they honored that first. They agreed. So she flew to Thailand in September of 2002 with 6 suitcases packed so heavily that they barely closed, with no intention of ever coming back. Before the flight, she was forced to train Epstein's new assistant, a girl of approximately 15. She had to show her how to massage Epstein. She was also assigned to recruit a girl in Thailand. But of course, she didn't recruit anybody. Instead, she met a 26-year-old Australian martial artist named Robbie Joffrey. 10 days later, she married him at a Buddhist temple on a mountaintop, and that same night, she called Epstein. She said, "I fell in love and got married, Jeffrey. I am never coming back." There was silence. Complete silence. And then, calmly, Epstein responded, "Have a great life." And the phone clicked. And that was the last time that she would ever hear his voice. Some would dispute what Virginia wrote in her memoir as sensationalized. The FBI, in their words, say scant evidence for a trafficking ring involving powerful men, and it didn't help that 2 other victims directly contradicted some of her claims. So we were left with a lot of conflicting evidence, as we have been through this entire story. In 2025, Virginia and Robbie separated after 22 years of marriage. She was in court fighting a custody battle for their 3 children. Then in March of 2025, she was in a car accident. The car accident left her hospitalized with renal failure. And from there, she suffered chronic health issues, necessitating multiple surgeries. She very quickly became dependent on prescription drugs. On April 25th, 2025, Virginia Joffrey, she was found unresponsive. She was at her farm in Western Australia, and she was 41 years old. Her death was ruled suicide from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But her father, he denied it. He said that there is no way that she did that. But no evidence of foul play was found. And sadly, she did have previous suicide attempts. She died without seeing a single person that she named in her testimony spend 1 day in prison for what they had done to her. She started this story sitting at a desk with a massage book in her hands, trying to build something. She ended it in Western Australia at 41, and the men whose names are in those files still remain in their homes. Her memoir, Nobody's Girl, was published after her death in October 2025, and it became a bestseller. But she never got to see justice. Here is something that does not appear in any official report. Epstein's staff was filing it all away, and they would come back to work every day, right? His pilots flew the same routes for years. His housekeepers changed sheets and set out towels and prepared the massage rooms, and they heard what happened behind closed doors. But they would return the next morning like nothing changed, nothing happened. The architecture of what Epstein built didn't just require powerful men that were willing to look away. It required ordinary ones too. People needed the paycheck more than they needed to know what the paycheck was for. That is the thing that should keep you awake, not the monster, but how he got away with it. The silence. He was so good at creating silence. When the FBI raided Epstein's Manhattan mansion and his island, Little St. James, they walked into the physical architecture of everything that we have just described. The Manhattan mansion has wide front doors and a grand stairway. And visible from the entrance is an oversized portrait of Bill Clinton in a blue dress. Further in, a shelf of books, flanked by a statue of a lion biting into its prey's neck. There was a large gym, kitchen areas, a dining room across just enormous rooms, 4 to 6 bedrooms, Epstein's infamous office with a piano and a stuffed tiger, a room with a round table and what appears to be a stripper's pole, and the massage room that Virginia nicknamed the dungeon, with a wicked massage table pictured here. Throughout the property, there's statues of women's bodies just everywhere. Very actual uniforms that the girls were forced to wear. Very actually explicit artwork too, and hundreds of explicit items. And in Epstein's private office, there were framed photographs of his victims on the walls. He looked at them every day. On Little St. James, the island it's genuinely beautiful. Clear water, extraordinary tropical views, bright buildings against lush green. That contrast, it sits in the chest like stone. It's a little poetic, but that's how it feels. The beauty and the ugliness occupying the same physical space. There are bungalows served as quarters for Epstein's guests during their visits. These are the rooms where the occurred. There's the pool, and then there's this sun circle stone thing with benches. It looks in photographs as though it was built for rituals. The famous striped tower, which the files reveal to contain nothing particularly significant in its interior. The main island mansion holds the same pattern as the Manhattan property. It's got an extravagant office with multiple bedrooms and lots of actual items distributed throughout it, because of course it does. Bringing it down, also among the released photographs, there were underage girls. These images are from modeling portfolios that Epstein kept. Their faces are young enough that they just barely look like teenagers. There's images of girls on yachts, girls in cars, girls at birthday parties, girls in the same bedrooms that we had just previously described. If you look at these photos, these are the children, and these are the released images. There are photos where the FBI failed to properly redact the victims' faces. And when I tell you that these girls look like children, I'm saying it because I have seen the unredacted images, and some of these girls are wearing braces. And if you saw them at your local school, they would just fit right in, right? Obviously, I will not show their faces out of respect for these victims. In one photograph, a man holds up the ID card of an underage girl. He holds it toward the camera. He's not concealing it. He's presenting it. They stole these girls' lives, and they were proud enough to document it. We also have photographs of Epstein alongside his victims, in which he poses kind of like a father figure. This is exactly the role that he constructed with Virginia. The warmth in those photographs is among the most disturbing things in the entire file release, because it shows how completely the trap was designed to look like something else. The worst of the worst we have reserved for last. It is Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirators being intimate with teen girls. Remember that these girls were being essentially kidnapped from high schools, the same place you or your friends may have attended, and they lurked every single day looking for more vulnerable girls. These girls were hundreds of times and forced into just unimaginable pain and trauma. And this is something that they're going to have for the rest of their lives. And the pictures you are seeing, this is apparently what is deemed safe for consumption by the DOJ. There are countless and countless more of these types of photos, but there's really no need to show them. I mean, you get the point. This man and his circle of were just pure evil. And then there's the emails that go just way beyond the photographs. In 2009, Epstein wrote to an unidentified receipt, "Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video." It's disgusting. It's disgusting. In 2011, to a man named Tancredi Marchiolo, he says, "Do you want me to try to do her or just torture her?" The DOJ has still not really explained these emails, and no investigation has followed them specifically. They sit in the released files, and nobody in authority has asked what they mean. There are hundreds of explicit photographs of underage victims in the release files. And bear in mind that the FBI never released the worst of what they found. Only 3.5 million files out of over 6 million have been made public. And what was withheld includes external DOJ memos explaining why powerful people weren't prosecuted, intelligence-related materials, and 70 to 80% of what was actually presented in court. The attorney for the victims called the partial release the single most egregious violation of victim privacy in one day in United States history. She said that. What a mouthful. Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested alongside Epstein and is currently serving a 20-year sentence in federal prison. 20 years is insanely short, in my opinion. And on July 24th, 2005, she was interviewed by Trump's Deputy Attorney General. In the interview, she stated that Trump and Clinton are completely innocent, denied having introduced Andrew to Epstein, and denied any personal wrongdoing. And she said that she had no knowledge of any secret surveillance systems, despite the fact that every single room in every single one of Epstein's properties was equipped with one. For her cooperation, she was moved to a minimum security facility in Camp Bryan, Texas. On February 10th, 2026, Maxwell appeared before the House Oversight Committee and invoked the Fifth Amendment more than a dozen times, refusing to answer any significant question. Her attorney stated publicly she is prepared to speak fully and honestly if granted clemency by President Trump. The most prominent convicted trafficker in modern history is negotiating her silence with the sitting president of the United States. Let that sink in. From where I'm sitting, I don't think this woman has an ounce of regret. On December 19th, 2025, the first batch of the Epstein files was released, and it was so heavily redacted that it sparked immediate public fury. And then a second, larger release followed on January 30th, 2026. But still, only roughly half of the total files have been made public. Faulty redactions meant that some blacked out content could be recovered simply by copying and pasting the files into a different application. Who's in control of this? This is crazy. As of February 2026, Epstein is dead. Brunel is dead. Maxwell is in prison, and she is saying absolutely nothing without a deal. Those are the only convictions that we are going to get from the largest known trafficking network in American history. Every other person that was named in these files, every powerful man connected to them, every associate, every co-conspirator granted immunity in the 2008 plea deal has faced 0 charges, 0 prosecutions, and absolutely 0 accountability. On January 30th, 2026, the Deputy Attorney General addressed this publicly. There is a lot of correspondence. There are a lot of emails. There are a lot of photographs, and there are a lot of horrible photographs that appear to be taken by Mr. Epstein or people around him, but that doesn't allow us necessarily to prosecute somebody. The victims want to be made whole, but that doesn't mean we can just create evidence or come up with a case that isn't there. I take umbrage at the suggestion that the Attorney General or this department does not take exploitation or that we somehow do not want to protect the victims. The review is done. The files are released, and no one is being charged. No victims are being protected through prosecution. The official position of the United States government is that nothing in 3.5 million pages of material about the world's most prolific known trafficking network rises to the level of requiring anyone powerful to answer for it. How is this possible? What is happening? Virginia Giuffre spent the second half of her short life in courtrooms, fighting custody battles, recovering from surgeries, and testifying against men who hired press spokespeople to respond to her testimony. She started this story, trying to learn a trade and build something real for herself. And she ended up in a farmhouse in Western Australia at 41 years old, while the men whose names are in those files just went about their lives. The photograph still exists. The one that she held in her trembling hands, where she said, "I'm not sure I should be showing you this." The one with Ghislaine grinning and Andrew's hand around a 16-year-old girl's waist, taken hours before she was forced into what came next. That photograph exists. Her testimony exists. Her memoir exists. And her father's words exist. More than 6 million files exists. And the criminals, they still walk among us. Jeffrey Epstein built his empire on a single truth. He understood, better than almost anyone, that the powerful people in the world are also the most afraid. Afraid of losing what they have. Afraid of what the person across the table knows about them. Afraid of what happens when the photograph surfaces or the email is read out loud in court. He fed that fear, and in doing so, he made himself untouchable. Not because he was powerful on his own, but because everyone around him had too much to lose from his exposure. Thousands of people knew what was happening, and the police knew, and they let him go. The only thing more disturbing than what Epstein did is the size of the silence that surrounded it for decades, and the speed with which that silence is being restored right now. 3 million more files have not been released. People are already forgetting about this case. And that is exactly what they want to happen, so that they can just get away with all of it. If this video meant anything to you, please share it. These girls' stories deserve to be heard, and the public has to hold the DOJ accountable so that justice can actually be delivered instead of just letting this go again. Anyway, that really riled me up. Wow. Okay, well, I am going to be impatiently waiting for more files to drop, and when they do drop, expect more videos on it. Thank you for diving into this case with me, and if you're also weirdly fascinated by true crime, then respectfully go ahead and hit subscribe. We make videos like this every single week. Be kind to yourself after this one, and I will see you in future videos. Bye.